Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel, Mormonism with the Murph, where we do a fair and objective analysis of the church and its truth claims, its history, doctrine, and policy. So we've been doing a multi-episode series on Joseph Smith's polygamy. In part 6, we had a look at his marriages to teenage girls. We had a look at particular accounts of Helen Mar Kimball, who was the youngest of Joseph Smith's wives, who was 14, Lucy Walker, the Partridge sisters, and Sarah Ann Whitney. We had a look at some of these accounts that many of them struggled when they were propositioned about marrying Joseph Smith and were taught about plural marriage. Many of them felt frightened that it was a huge sacrifice of their youth and of their happiness. And they struggled with this. Some claim that they did receive a spiritual manifestation. In some cases, they were promised eternal salvation for them and their family. Critics would point to that there is pressure, that they had 24 hours to make a decision. You could look at that in the Lucy Walker story, and that there was also some secret and even fake ceremonies that were performed as well, so that everything was kept very secret. You might have thought my last video was maybe a little bit more critical, but as I was going through those accounts, I did find them personally deeply troubling. And I don't really want to try to defend or justify Joseph's polygamy, and especially his marrying of young girls. And especially as I read their accounts, while I do acknowledge that they claim to have divine experiences, and I don't want to dismiss those, I find their accounts very troubling as I look into it and as I think about how other religious leaders might be marrying young girls and using similar tactics to persuade them. It really does bother me. But anyway, in part 7, we're going to be looking at were there sexual relations with Joseph and his wives. I know there's a small minority of members who still believe that Joseph Smith was not a polygamist, or if he was, they were just ceilings. So let's jump into the evidence. So let's begin. So, did plural marriage include sexual relations? So, this comes from josephsmithspolygamy.org. Some wonder if sexual relations were included in Joseph Smith's plural marriages. The answer is yes or no, depending on the type of plural marriage. Those marriages, often called sealings, were of two types. Some were for this life and the next, time and eternity, and could include sexuality on earth. Others were limited to the next life, called eternity only, and did not allow intimacy in or mortality. Overall evidence indicates that less than half of Joseph Smith's polygamous unions were consummated, and sexual relations in the others occurred infrequently. So, did Joseph Smith have sex with his wives? So, there's a list of the wives here, and we're going to look at some of the evidence. For some of the wives, there's very strong evidence that there was sexual relations, and some it's less strong, and then some are quite weak. So Joseph Smith was likely sealed to between 30 and 40 women during his lifetime. The number is closer to 40. Of these, it appears the prophet experienced sexual relations with some, but not all. There are no credible evidence that Joseph had sex with three subgroups of his plural wives, so the 14-year-old wives, non-wives or women who were married to legal husbands, and legally married women who were experiencing conjugal relations with their civil husbands. So, strong evidence of sexual relations. So, Emily Partridge, when under oath in a deposition in the Temple Lock case, Emily Partridge was asked, "Do you make the declaration that you ever slept with him in the same bed?" To which she answered, "Yes, sir." Lucy Walker, Lucy Walker's niece, Theodosia Frances Walker Davis, reported to Joseph Smith III in 1876 that Lucy Walker told her that she lived with Joseph Smith as a wife. Melissa Lott, in the 1893 interview with the RLDS Church President Joseph Smith III, he asked Melissa Lott if she was the prophet's wife in very deed, to which she answered yes. Eliza Partridge, concerning Emily's sister Eliza, Benjamin F. Johnson wrote in 1903, "The first plural marriage wife brought to my house with whom the prophet stayed was Eliza Partridge." Now, this one is secondhand. Let's look at some of the others. So this comes from Joseph Smith's Polygamy. Louisa Beeman. So she has to say that When Joseph Bates Noble, Louisa's brother-in-law, was asked where did they, Joseph and his plural wife Louisa Beeman, sleep together, he responded, right straight across the river at my house they slept together. Almira Johnson. Benjamin Johnson affirmed his sister Almira Johnson experienced sexual relations with the prophet. He, Joseph Smith, was at my house where he occupied my sister Almira's room and bed. Maria Lawrence on May 23, 1844. William Law, who had apostatized months earlier over plural marriage, charged Joseph Smith in a Carthage court with living in an open state of adultery with Maria Lawrence. Obviously, William Law did not agree with Joseph Smith's practice of polygamy, and even if he was married to her, believed that this was an adulterous relationship. Sarah Lawrence. Several statements document that Sarah Lawrence lived with the prophet as plural wife. For example, Lucy Walker attested in 1902. I know that Emma gave her consent to the marriage of at least 4 women, Emily and Eliza Partridge, Anne Maria and Sarah Lawrence, to her husband as plural wives, and she was well aware that he associated and cohabited with them as wives. And Fanny Alger. Several accounts record that Emma Smith witnessed Joseph and Fanny Alger together, but not what they were doing. One source asserts that Fanny became pregnant, so this one is definitely not as strong evidence. LDS historian Todd Compton notes, in conclusion, though it is possible that Joseph had some marriages in which there were no sexual relations, there is no explicit or convincing evidence for this, except perhaps in the cases of the older wives, judging from later Mormon polygamy. In a significant number of marriages, there is evidence for sexual relations. It is nearly impossible to argue that none of Smith's polygamous marriages were sexual in nature, and beyond dispute that nearly all later instances of polygamy were sexual. So again, the purpose of polygamy was to multiply and replenish the earth to bear children. So of course, sexual relations would be expected in many of these relationships, and there is strong evidence in particularly those 8 or so women that we looked at. The ones where maybe the evidence isn't as strong as the marriages to the 14-year-old Helen Mar Kimball and to the polyandrous marriages as well. But most likely, and at least some of the marriage relationships, there were sexual relations. Now, critics would point to, well, if the purpose is to have sexual relations to bear children, then he had to have been having sex with, his 14-year-old brides and with other men's wives. That's the whole point, which then would be very problematic. So in summary, it's difficult to determine how frequent were the sexual relations. We're just going off the documentation, but really none of us know who Joseph Smith, which of his wives he was sleeping with for sure. We just have their accounts. We weren't there. We don't know what happened. Joseph, during the Nauvoo period, he was busy with the church, with family matters, running for president, and he was also in hiding. So all those things would indicate that there wouldn't have been maybe a lot of sexual relations happening. Joseph was keeping the practice of polygamy quiet and hidden during the Nauvoo years. Many of the women were fertile and bore children after their marriage with Joseph, which would indicate sex wasn't regular. And that's a really important point, that many of these children after Joseph Smith died, they went on to have children with other husbands. So it would indicate that sex wasn't regular, or else these women would have been getting pregnant, unless you speculate that abortions or things were happening. There are rumors that there were children born of the prophet, but no concrete evidence is confirmed by DNA. So that sums up this video. It's a little bit shorter. In part 8, we're going to be looking at Joseph Smith's polygamy, D&C 132, and how this has to relate to Emma Smith. So that'll be a really good episode. If you've enjoyed this one, please give it a thumbs up. Please like, share, and subscribe. If you care to support me, you can to my personal PayPal account, stephen.murphy1996@outlook.com. You can also follow me on my Facebook page, Mormonism with the Murph. Please subscribe to this channel, as I'm bringing out new content, new videos, so you don't miss anything. And I will see you all on the next one. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.